Welcome to this week's edition of the Casual Shooters Podcast, your premier podcast for the casual shooter. This week's guest is a fellow podcaster and was the match director for this year's Chile Custom Gunworks Michigan sectional. That's a mouthful. Join me in welcoming Alex Mansfield, aka Manny, to the show. How you doing, Manny?
Doing fantastic, Dave. Thank you for inviting me on.
Oh, I had to return the favor. I just wanted to wait a little bit so that we weren't like back to back on each other's podcasts. That'd be weird.
It could be. It might work out that better way.
Yeah, maybe. All right. So as you may know, actually take a moment and introduce yourself, Manny. I'm getting ahead of myself.
Well, that's okay. So for any of your listeners who don't know who I am, I'm Alex or Manny from Manny Talks Shooting, a fellow podcaster and competitive USPSA shooter. CRO, match director, play a bunch of different hats, I guess. So I'm fully developed into the competitive shooting arena.
All right, there we go. And we're going to talk more about that and your podcast here shortly. As you may well know, I like to ask certain icebreaker questions. So we're going to begin there. We're going to throw all the hard questions at you at the beginning. Your favorite movie?
Ooh, so I had to pick two. I couldn't decide on just one because so many good movies have come out in my, throughout my whole life. So, but I guess my top favorite movie of all time is The Dark Crystal. If you haven't,
The Dark Crystal.
Yeah, The Dark Crystal, like a Jim Henson movie. The puppets.
Oh.
So if anyone is too young to understand what The Dark Crystal is, go look it up. There's even a prequel series on Netflix that kind of describes like the beginning before the actual movie back so long ago. It was a great movie. Showed like the skill of, puppeteering. It was such a good movie. And then actually being able to see like a Jim Henson display, like because the puppets got to travel for a while in an exhibit. So I got later in life, I think about 2 years ago, I got to actually see some of the puppetry on display. So that was really cool. But a current favorite movie of mine would be the newest Thor movie, Thor: Love and Thunder. So if anyone's a superhero movie fan, they'd like that movie as well.
I almost feel like we're going to have to skip the superhero question. I felt like we just had a spoiler.
No, it's not, though. It's actually not.
Okay. All right, good. I like the suspense. Mm-hmm. All right. I have found that not too many people read very much anymore. Favorite book?
So this one was actually pretty hard for me, Dave. I really don't read. I consume a lot of audio knowledge, but I had to dig back into memory bank. So I guess my favorite book of all time would be The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. So getting to read that, young with my dad and I liked watching. I think when the first Lord of the Rings movie came out, we kind of took it back. We started reading, and I liked The Hobbit more than the Lord of the Rings. So growing up, I've read it a couple of times just to bring back some good memories. But if we need to talk about like my favorite competitive shooting book, though, I would give it to Charlie Perez, The Path of Focused Effort, a learning guide for practical shooting. It's a very nice book based on Charlie's experiences and his forms of teaching. I haven't taken a Charlie class yet, but it's definitely worth picking up the book.
Interesting. I've not heard of that one, so I'll have to check that out. Okay. Going back real quick, what was it about The Hobbit that made you like that book better than The Lord of the Rings?
It was just kind of a lighter book back for me growing up, but I've always loved fantasy. Like fantasy settings have been like my jam. I remember watching cartoons as a kid and stuff and just being absorbed in like more the fantasy more than the sci-fi. And it was a good story.
Okay. How long ago did you read Charlie's book?
It's got to be less than a year now. I was very fortunate. He sent me a copy after I had him on my podcast. So I've really gotten to read it and like it. It's different than like a Steve Anderson dry fire book or a Ben Steger book because they just come from different paths and different ways of thinking.
So in Charlie's book, is it more of an actual book? Because when you mentioned Ben and Steve, I think more of a manual of shooting. You know what I mean? Like how to apply yourself to practical shooting and get better.
Hmm.
Is Charlie's more about the experience or what's his book about?
If I could describe it in simple terms, his book is kind of like Ben's in a way where it tells you things to do, but it's not necessarily a manual. It's a more of, hey, for these kind of things, look at these things to do to fix these problems. And it's more of a narrative, even though more than a manual per se. But it's interesting to see how he thinks comparatively to other instructors, because he does think of a lot of different things than some other top level national instructors.
Okay. Well, he's got the experience, so it's interesting how I was talking to somebody about this recently. I mean, you could who was it? I forget who I was talking to, but I used JJ and Ben as an example.
Tyler
Where
Meisenheimer.
is that who it was?
Yep, I was listening to that
Okay.
today.
Okay. Yeah, and I mean, you've got two totally different guys, equally able, but with completely different methods of teaching and what they teach. So I find it interesting. So now I'm intrigued by Charlie Perez's book.
Hmm. Yeah, and one
All
reason why I
right.
really like it is the fact that it's spiral bound. So when you fold it over, it doesn't like destroy the binding.
Oh, that is nice. That's unique, actually.
Yeah, I think Steve's books and Charlie's book are the only ones that are like that currently on the market.
And I almost feel like Ben's books could be like that. Like you could put little what are those little sticky yellow colored tabs,
Hmm.
where you could separate stuff out, and if it were spiral bound, you could easily just flip to that page.
Right. Yeah, especially like with his book, with his newest book, Practical Shooting Fundamentals, or found, I don't know, it's the one with the new 1911 on the cover. When there's so many sections of that book, it just, that would actually be nice.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even the loading manuals, I wish they were like that.
Mm.
So,
Hmm.
all right, moving along. Your favorite gun of all time and your favorite caliber. They don't have to be married together.
All right, I'm gonna take a cheat on this one. So I can't say I have a favorite particular gun, although that'd be selfish. But it's the fact of all open guns. All 2011 open guns are my favorite, purely for the fact is like, the competition market and the competition scene tests a lot of equipment, and it's been able to push innovation throughout the regular industry. But I think open guns just look cool. They're enjoyable to shoot. They might be a little loud sometimes, but there's no
Uh,
rush.
that's
There's
an
no,
understatement. They're
yeah,
always loud.
no, 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 no. My gun is not loud. Most open guns aren't loud, and most people think, oh, this is blasphemous. I only put inner ears in. I don't wear muffs. I can't do it.
Okay.
But
Well, most of the open guns I've seen are very loud.
you just need to know where
Unless
to
if you're
stand.
shooting them, they're not as loud. It's when you're not the shooter that you're like, holy guacamole, Batman.
And maybe I've been so, you know how they say nose blind? Maybe I'm just ear blind to open guns. But even before I started shooting open, they didn't really bother me because they just, even when you're like even the RO or someone back there, they've never seemed to bother me.
Do you have the reactive ears that um, shut off when there's a loud noise, or are
Uh,
yours always off?
I used to have reactive ears until they keep dying on me, and I'm just like, it's not worth recharging them because they're gonna die. So currently, all I'm using is just some regular basic plugs.
Because using the reactive ones, I have found most times people shooting 9mm won't shut off my hearing.
Hmm.
But I have had open guns on other bays shut my hearing off.
Hmm.
That's why I say it's it's
Yeah,
loud. All
but
right,
yeah,
caliber then.
that would be 38 Super Comp. I currently don't own a 38 Super Comp gun, but getting to shoot a few of those, it is a different experience altogether, and it's an amazing cartridge. It was made through competition shooting. Like I remember, you talking to Todd Jarrett and getting to learn about the 38 TJ. So, I mean, it all kind of grows from the needs of the sport. So,
Mm-hmm. They're unique in that way.
mm-hmm,
So, but why do you like? So, obviously, you're shooting 9 major.
mm-hmm.
Is it less? Is the super comp less violent?
There's more case volume, so you can get away with, say, without being such a compressed load more
Okay,
often than not. So, you can put the same type of bullet, almost the same powder charge, yet still have, a quarter inch of case with, the bullet sitting on top of the powder, not necessarily pressing it down.
but that does help with chamber pressure. I mean, that would relieve it. So that's a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so yeah, I'm going to say yeah, that's less violent.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so the fifth question I try to make unique to the guest, and in your case, it's going to get a little spicy.
Ooh.
Now, because you have your own podcast, so you have to deal with some of the things that I deal with as well, which is
Mm-hmm.
what all the podcasters deal with. And what are your thoughts on the current political situation within the USPSA?
Ooh. Yep, you really do start with the spicy ones right away. What do I think of the current? Although I don't necessarily always like to talk openly about my
Me either.
displeasures with the board, I will say this is, um, I am not one to jump to first round conclusions. I will sit back a little bit and observe, but I'm very critical of them in my opinions. But I'm not going to personally attack any board member or their decisions without probable cause or enough, digging into the information. But sometimes when they make decisions like the current, the initial push
Membership
for
dues.
membership dues, I think that was completely wrong. Even though
Yeah.
I am a life member, I still feel for the rest of the sport, it's like there definitely should have been in the initial push a grace period or a window. So if people want to know my more about my opinions on things, they're more than willing to happy to share. But like I state, I don't necessarily need to attack the board because it just causes more drama and it gets us nowhere.
Well, I'm going to say two things. One, um, I sent off a letter after Yemen Lin's removal, and um, Leighton and Ted both called me.
Mm-hmm.
So they were good conversations. That doesn't mean I agree with what they do or what they say, but they were good, pleasant conversations. And the one with Leighton was like an hour and a half long. It was long.
Mm-hmm.
So, we had a lot of discussion. Um, but again, it doesn't mean I agree with what they do or what they say, but it was pleasant. So like you, I don't attack the individuals. I've had pleasant conversation with Scott Arnberg too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I totally agree that the way that they went about upping the membership dues was a very poor choice. There should have been much more thought put into that and not I don't want to call it a spur of the moment vote, but I felt like somebody should have made a motion. They put the information out there in the minutes, and somebody should have put a motion up to revisit it the following month.
Mm-hmm.
Then you would get feedback. You don't have to ask for feedback. You're going to get feedback. And then
Oh,
you can make a
100%.
decision. You know what I mean? And then
Mm-hmm.
they wouldn't have had this issue. I don't know why they voted on it right then. I was like, that's crazy. That's just asking for trouble. I don't get it.
Well, and it was unfortunate for Russell. He just became the Area 8 director at the
Mm-hmm.
beginning of that meeting and had to vote on on a very big matter. And I don't necessarily think that was the right call on the board to throw somebody right into the fire and say, "Hey, make this big decision with us."
But at the same time, he's a grown man.
Mm-hmm.
He can make his own decisions. He could have voted no.
He could have voted no, but I guess if we're going to stay on the subject for a second, is do I believe that they should have raised dues? Probably, yeah. We needed to raise dues. They haven't gone up in
Yes.
20 years, but not the way that we
Yes.
did it.
Correct. Yeah, I'm all for raising dues. Don't I hope nobody gets that different. And I've actually said that on I've commented that on a few posts on Instagram that look, we need to up the dues, but you don't make up for 20 years in 1 month.
Mm-hmm.
So it's got to be an incremental increase over several years to get us to where we need to be. You determine where we need to be in like 3 or 5 years, and you take that difference and you split it up and you do it each year. So then
Mm-hmm.
people know. And like me, I'm probably going to go ahead and get my life membership because it's about to go up crazy. So I
Mm-hmm.
need to get it now while I can. All right. So backing way up, did you grow up shooting and hunting, anything like that?
Yeah, so I grew up in, anyone doesn't know, I live in the lower peninsula of Michigan. So I grew up in a hunting outdoor family. Not necessarily did my father and I go out and hunt all the time, but it was more that I was taken along by my uncle. And I'm very thankful for him to taking me out year after year, weekend after weekend. Even if we didn't see anything, we got to spend some quality time. I lost him a couple years ago due to a health issue, but there's
Hmm.
always good memories of going out, sitting there. Typically, most of the time, hit myself falling asleep in the deer blind, but always a good time. And it was always a good thing to go up, and if he got a deer, or one of his brothers got one. It was always fun standing around and uh, reminiscing about the stories.
Right. A lot of times it's just being out in the in the woods.
Hmm.
So what were you using to hunt with? Rifle, shotgun,
Where we
archery?
live, we can't use rifle calibers other than the 450 Bushmaster down here where I live. So it was mostly shotguns, mostly 12 gauges.
Yeah, that's what we were using when I was growing up too, with shotguns. So when did you shoot your first pistol?
When did I shoot my first pistol? Probably. Oh, now you're gonna make me think. Probably when I was 22. I didn't
Oh,
shoot. Yeah, we didn't have pistols growing up necessarily because not that I didn't think we owned any, but I never shot one until I actually got my concealed carry. So no one brought me up shooting pistols. It was always 22 rifles or the shotguns. We'd get the throwers out and shoot them on family's property.
okay. Now what? So all right. So then you grew up. You became an adult. Turned 21. At some point, you decided to get your concealed carry. Why was that?
Um, I guess it was a little bit of culture at the time. A lot of things had started to change. In the political scene and just in the world in general. I'd been married already, so I was like, well, I need to protect my family, so I'm going to go out and get a pistol, and then carry it on a daily basis. So, but I guess there's maybe a little bit of online, not pressure, but I got a lot of information online before I even made the decision. Like a lot of YouTube videos, a lot of information that I digested before deciding to go through that process.
Okay. So you got your concealed carry. At what point did you find competition shooting?
So that was, when did I find that? I got my member number in the end of 2020. So probably in 2019, near the end of 2019, I had listened to a podcast with Scott Jedlinski and I want to say Tim Herron. They were on a podcast together, and I'd been into the tactical kind of side of things and the self defense kind of stuff. And then depending on who was talking, you would hear some of these competition shooter names, and Tim was one of those, and Ben stuck out. So then I started following Tim and learned more about competition shooting, and eventually decided, well, this is what I want to do.
So how many years was it between getting your concealed carry and 2019?
2 years, maybe a year and a half, two
Oh, okay.
years.
Oh, so not long at all.
Right.
Okay. So when you say tactical, you just mean like self defense tactical, or
Yeah, a little bit self defense. A little bit of I guess I would call it more. There's the other instructors out there, just firearms proficiencies instructors who go out and teach like Scott Jedlinski did, Aaron Cowan of Sage Dynamics. a lot of those, I'd call them tactical, but I guess they're just not performance-based shooting training, but they have some experience either through police or military service.
I gotcha.
But I wouldn't say
Okay.
they weren't teaching tactics. Let me put my air quotes up for
Right.
the audio listeners. Tactics.
Right. So, and that's where I go back to. So, mostly self defense type tactics per se.
Right. Yeah. If we're gonna put it on
Yeah.
any category, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, 2 years later, you find out about practical shooting.
Mm-hmm.
Is USPSA the only thing you've shot?
I have shot a few outlaw matches, purely because I took a Tim Herron class at one point, and after that class, there was a couple of matches at this one range that I went to, which I knew the people who ran it, so I was like, okay, I'll go. It wasn't necessarily the closest range to go shoot at, but it was USPSA like. It wasn't. It was guys who shot USPSA and IDPA, but they didn't want to be affiliated with anybody, so they ran their ish match. So you'd have a couple rules from here and a couple rules from here.
Okay. So, did it allow you to? Did they allow you to load on the move?
Yeah, it was a practical shooting, like a
Okay.
complete practical shooting match, but they just didn't want to be officially affiliated with either of the sports.
Okay. Because I feel like that's the only thing really missing in IDPA is the fact that I don't mean loading on the move. I mean shooting on the move.
Mm-hmm.
I think they need to institute some exceptions because even in a self-defense situation, you don't necessarily want to be a sitting target. You may need to shoot and move. So I feel like it should be incorporated into that. I feel like if they did that, then that would just progress them a little bit more.
Oh yeah, and like at this first outlaw match I went to, we got to shoot out of cars, and it was really fun. They had some beat up old
Oh
cars,
yeah.
so we're shooting through busted out windshield. Well, the windshields are all gone, but shooting through the windshield or maybe the windows. Um, it was kind of fun.
Yeah, that stuff is fun. I went. I don't mean to tell a story, but I will. I
Mm-hmm.
went through a school where you started in the front seat of a vehicle and you were holstered,
Mm-hmm.
and they had a pop-up target that popped up right at your car door window. Literally, just it was laying on the ground, and you just sitting there hanging onto the steering wheel like you're at a stoplight. And the start of that scenario was when that target presented itself, game on. So you had to unbuckle, shoot, go through the window on the opposite side, and then engage a whole bunch of stuff. So that stuff is fun.
Mm-hmm.
I'm right there with you with that. And that's more self-defense tactical stuff there.
Yeah.
So I'm with you. Now, have you shot any actual IDPA matches?
No, those match directors are still my friends, and I tell them, it's like, I need to go shoot this major match with you guys. It's called Who's Your Daddy, which is, I want to say, about an hour. Well, it's spelled Hoosier, like Indiana
Right,
Hoosier.
Indiana. Right.
Yeah, but it's in Michigan. It's in Sturgis, Michigan. But it's about an hour and a half, maybe an hour and 45 minutes away from me. And this would be the only reason I'd go shoot it, is shoot it with some friends. But so I haven't shot any real IDPA. But it's on the list, but it's not that serious to actually go make it happen.
Right. It's not a priority.
Right.
I do enjoy IDPA, but again, the people where I go and shoot, they put together some very good stages. So they're always fun to shoot. But I just wish they would expand the abilities just a little bit. Now, you mentioned that you took a class from Tim Herron. Have you taken any others?
Yep. So I've taken 2 classes with Tim, and I've also taken, before that, I took 2 classes with Steve Fisher of Sentinel Concepts. And those classes, the Steve classes, were a handgun diagnostics kind of class, like learning what you can do with your sights. And it was kind of like a 25 yard and in kind of class. So we're on a static line working, 3, 5, 7, 10, 15, 25, kind of building out some bad habits in shooters and kind of watching what the sights or the red dot are telling you about your grip or whatnot. So those Steve classes were very fundamental. yet very informative at that current level, because it then helped me kind of go into shooting USPSA a little bit, knowing about shot calling or watching the sights or seeing the sights move and where they can kind of impact and change where you're going to hit on that target. So you have more of an idea of what your hits are going to look like on paper.
Gotcha. Now, did you start in open?
No, so I started USPSA. My first match was the October of 2020. So I joined USPSA at late night 2019. Didn't shoot a whole match because of COVID until late of 2020. And I started straight and carry optics because I was like, I want to shoot a red dot. That's all I want to shoot. Not that I couldn't shoot irons. It was just not my game. I still can't see irons very well, even with these super thick glasses that I wear. I'm just like, red dot for me only. And it's honestly kept me encouraged, because shooting irons would be very discouraging, I feel, for at least for my vision and what I know I have to, what I can see. It's just like, I don't want to go through struggles of trying to shoot irons and then finding dot life and be like, oh yeah, I can see and I can actually shoot targets fast.
There you go. So what was your first gun and sight combo?
So my first gun, well, I guess I'll say this: when I first got to carry concealed carry, I started with a Glock 19, and then I figured out that Glock 19s were too small for my hands. I just couldn't get enough good grip because I have long, wide palms. So I went to a Glock 17 for my first USPSA gun, a Glock 17 Gen 5 MOS, and I started with a Trijicon RMR on top of that, and then eventually I moved to a 17 with an SRO, 5 MOA SRO.
So you basically did the same thing I did, minus the gun, but the optic change was exactly the same. I went from an RMR to an SRO, and the window size was like, wow, I can see so much more.
Yeah.
It's so much more forgiving.
Yeah, and well, because then I was smart enough. I got a competition gun, and my carry gun stayed the same, so I didn't have to, have one go from my concealed carry holster, get unloaded before the match, and then get put into a gun rug for the match. So it was kind of a nicety for a while, because they were both stock triggers for a long time. So I shot stock Glock triggers for a while, and then when I got the real competition gun, I was able to start messing with aftermarket triggers in my guns.
Gun. So how long did you shoot carry optics before you switched over to open?
I started shooting open in January of 2023.
Oh, so just this year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you did a full 2 seasons of shooting your carry optics gun before switching over.
Yep.
And what was what spurred you into switching to open?
So I don't know if, hopefully people have heard of this show. Do you remember the TV show Hot Shots that followed like Max, JJ, oh, I'm sorry, Max, Casey, Jerry Michalik, Clint Upchurch, back on the Outdoors channel. So back in the day, there was this TV show called Hot Shots, and we followed Max winning Steel Challenge. This is probably back 2013, 2014 era. Okay. So he 1 year he won the Steel Challenge, the Pro-Am, and Handgun Nationals all in 1 year. So he won the triple. He was the first person to win the Triple Crown, at least according to this TV show. And then the next year he won the World Shoot in Florida. So you followed them through the seasons to progress and through all these overarching shows. You can find it on YouTube, season 1 through season 4. That's all they made.
Okay.
But watching Casey, Shane Coley, Max Michelle, Jerry Michalik all shoot open guns was like, that's what I eventually want to do. And I really didn't think I was going to be able to actually afford having an open gun until I met enough people in, end of last year, beginning of this year, that kind of made it possible for me to get into open. So it's been a interesting endeavor.
You mean as in sponsorships type stuff?
Well, just connections, like people at the range I know who, they gave me information on use this load with this powder. And then actually being able to realize that I could afford to get an open gun built.
I got you. Okay, so your gun was brand new,
Hmm. Yep,
and what
brand
are
new.
you shooting?
So it is a Chile Custom Gunworks gun. So pretty much all the parts are Chile Custom Gunworks. I have a binary engineering comp, a KKM barrel, and EGW internals in it. Um, yeah, and it's a top. It runs like a sewing machine. After I figured out that I needed to trim down one of the safeties, because I was always activating the manual safety on either the other side.
Mm,
So as soon as I got the weak side safety trimmed down, I didn't have any more of those kind of issues. So
okay.
so the gun has not had any issues. It was more of user error interface kind of stuff in the beginning.
All right, so I got to ask you the one question that all open shooters need to be asked. How much do your magazines cost?
So, but let's see. The big sticks are like 160, 170, and
Good
then
Lord.
the 140s are got to be like 140, 150 or something like that.
Man, before COVID hit, you were paying for as much for one big stick as I was paying for a case of ammo.
Hmm. Yeah.
Holy cow, dude.
But the trick is you get Black Friday sales. That's the trick to make magazines cheaper, which I did
That's
this.
racist.
Yeah. So the day after Thanksgiving sales, the national holiday. No, I'm not. I'm being for real with you, Dave. It's the fact that
I
like you
know.
can get the base pads for like a quarter of the price. The tubes if because I use infinity tubes, which is blasphemy. Most people are just like buy MBX, which well, I would agree with too. But my builder, the guy who helped me figure out the gun was all right. This is what we use. We use the Graham spring follower. We use an infinity tube and a Terran base pad. And
Okay.
so, and you saved good money on Infinity's website one time a year, the Black Friday sale. That's it.
Mm,
So,
okay.
so they become not as bad as they do street cost.
I gotcha. So are you going to be hitting up them again on the day after Thanksgiving sale?
Right now, probably not. I have four. I have enough magazines that I'm comfortable with. I have four 140s and two big sticks, so that gets me through two stages without actually having to reload like all my magazines. So I'm
So when you see these Instagram posts from like Christian and other people, like 20 magazines sitting there, I mean, what goes through your mind?
um can I borrow one of those?
But like, you greedy bastard, give me a couple.
Yeah, well, yeah. And honestly, I wish I had more, but I don't need any more. The thing is, I'd love to have practice mags and match mags. I currently just have mags. So I would like to have, because I've got my dry fire mags taken care of, but I would like to have mags dedicated just for practice sessions and then some just for matches because they do get abused and you don't necessarily like to drop them all the time, either on rock or concrete or wherever you're shooting. Got to conserve and reserve those investments.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm a practical guy.
Hmm.
So I am one of those that if I'm carrying a gun, then my competition gun. So I all I shoot are canics.
Hmm.
I carry a canic. I shoot canics in competition. That's what I do. I try to keep my rifles the same way, keep everything the same. If I'm going to buy a gun for personal use, then I'm going to use it in competition as well. I don't have, I don't like to think that I have double of stuff,
Hmm.
but I have those cushion squares that interlock in
Hmm.
my garage, so I don't have to worry about my magazines falling on the ground during dry fire and getting beat up. So
Hmm.
I just intermix all of my mags. If I need mags, I just buy a new gun.
All
I
right, there
get
you
two
go.
or
That's
three more right there. Yeah.
right, and it's always an investment. I will say,
Yeah.
I was very fortunate, and I was able to lay carpet down in my concrete basement. We got a like someone was given. I think it was a family member. It's like, here, we're changing carpet colors in the house. Do you want this carpet? They're like, I know where it came from, so I'm like, sure. I'm like, yeah. So we got
Yeah.
it laid super cheap. My dry fire space is all carpeted. That's like the only section in the
Nice.
basement that is. So it doesn't matter where I run around in. I drop a mag, it's going to be safe. But I use those double alpha dry fire mags. So
Oh, okay.
but those really don't like concrete either. So, but
Mm,
I'm okay with throwing a $20 piece of plastic away, not
sure.
necessarily spending $40 on a base pad that I have to replace because it's cracked now.
Right. I'm with you. You definitely want to ding up the lips of your magazines on concrete. So
Yeah.
I hear you completely. What actually, I guess what I was trying to get at earlier too is what drew you to open? I mean, you'd been shooting carry optics for a couple years. Was there something about it specifically that made you go, "That's what I want to do"?
Um, well, I'll put it back to this is the fact that I did watch that show, and it's like I said I wanted to do this. It was because it's fast, they're super cool looking, like the technology behind them is nice. I didn't know at the time when I first started watching that show, but it definitely it sparked an interest in me. And then when I started shooting with a bunch of open shooters, I was like, why am I shooting? I mean, one, I was beating most of them with a carry optics gun in minor, but I'm like, what happens if I really had an open gun to play hardball? So then the
Right.
competitiveness in me is like, I need an open gun.
Okay. Are you
So,
happy with the move?
oh, absolutely. Like as soon as I knew I was getting an open gun in 2022, like I was like, I figured out how to afford it. And I was like, all right, let's do it. I've got my frame. I had no ambition to shoot carry optics. I had no drive to
Mm,
want to practice at all. I was just like, I'm ready for open. Um, like last year's major match performances were terrible because I was in the wrong mindset for that. So going to open was my dream, and it kind of stifled performance last year because of it.
I got you. Okay. All because you knew you were going to open.
Open, and just that's I wanted to shoot it, and I couldn't the gun couldn't be done soon enough, right?
Right. Hey, do you have overnight fixing or overnight finishing on that? Like shipping?
Well, I knew it was going to take time. The guy who helped me was he finished it like in December. Had to get it coated in January, but it was I was just ready. But he didn't have like a backup gun I could shoot, but I wasn't quite ready yet either because I still had to gather all the necessary like powders and bullets because that's a whole different swing from shooting carry optics to shooting like open major loads. Learning a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm very fortunate to be friends with like top shooters like Andrew Hyder and Chris Galnett, who kind of were able to help me weed through some of the BS on stuff. Even though Chris will shoot blue bullets through his open gun, and uh, I don't know. I mean, I'm about to do that at a class here coming up, but it's a little sacrilege.
Plus you had to get a holster for it. I mean,
Mhm.
you're changing your whole setup.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, that was luckily enough, that wasn't as difficult as I thought. Although race holsters are expensive, so they're pretty much
yeah.
you kind of need to find one you like. The problem is the one I really wanted was never in stock until this year. But I'm not going to go spend another $300 on a race holster because I've already got one.
Yeah, those things are no joke. They are not cheap. And I want to say the cheaper ones are, still $150. So
Yeah.
they're not
Well,
cheap.
and Double Alpha knows for Double Alpha was not my first choice. Not that I'm unhappy with my choice. I couldn't get the Everglades holster that I really wanted because it was never in stock. But the Double Alpha is priced reasonably, but it's not like you can just go sell it today and get some of your money back out of it and go buy something else. It's it's unfortunate.
Okay. So while we're talking optics, what are your thoughts on limited optics? It's a 2011 frame. Would that ever be something that would interest you?
I may or may not be trying to get one. Not that I would leave open division because open is like where
Right.
my heart is, but like I could shoot a Glock in limited optics. I could shoot a Sig P320 in limited optics, but it's not the same trigger. It's not the same magazines. Like the investment on the 2011 platform is already big enough in my point at this stage already. That's like just get a 2011, shoots, same magazines. Pretty much you
Yeah.
can run, the same load other than, swapping some powder down, and so it's relatively the same kind of setup. You don't need to change a holster, mag pouches, anything. You can just switch guns out and shoot limited optics currently.
Okay. Now, when I guess we'll talk about the Michigan sectional.
Hmm.
Oh, but wait, you guys held that before limited optics became a thing.
Correct. Yep. We had to host that in April due to some scheduling conflicts around our home range.
Right. So it was, I don't, but it was towards the end of April, wasn't it?
Yeah, I was like 15th and 16th.
Okay. Yeah. You were just like 2 weeks shy of limited optics going live.
Yeah.
Okay. How is limited optics catching on where you're at?
I would say locally, you might see at the different local matches I go to 5 to 10, maybe 15 people at max shooting. Well, probably 5 to 10 people max. The majors I've shot this year, since May, since I did shoot the Buckeye Blast, which was the first major match to ever allow limited optics.
Mm-hmm.
There was a good showing, and every major match like Kentucky that I've shot, the Rhine Rocks Charity Blast, Area 5, they had decent numbers. And it's funny enough, most of the people I've seen at each match, I've seen at every match shooting limited optics. So that's kind of cool.
So they're being consistent.
Especially at the major match level.
Okay. Now, your thoughts, should it be combined and just be allowed into carry optics, or do you think it should be its own thing?
Mm,
Spicy.
it's not, I have
I
gone.
know.
So when we first talked about this, back in 2021, when people first started spouting out about, 20 single action only and carry optics, I was like dead set no. Now that I've been in the sport long enough and realized that skill matters more than equipment, yes, carry optics and limited optics should be combined, adding the things that, but I think there needs to be some tweaks here, right? So
Okay.
to combine them, you get rid of frame mounted thumb rests. So you can only have what's
Hmm.
allowed in carry optics. You can have slide stop replacement thumb rests. You allow magwells for the other guns that didn't have magwells in carry optics. But
Now,
I
do
also
you put a limit on the size of the magwell?
no, because so you just like put like those guns in the limited optics, but you get rid of thumb rests, like the frame mounted thumb
Okay.
rests and
So
the
you're
slider
changing
actors.
you're changing your, so basically you're taking carry optics and just allowing a different type of trigger. You're allowing the magwell and not adding the rules in that would allow like the thumb rest and stuff like that. Frame
Right.
mounted thumb rest.
Right, yeah. I'm fine with like a Shooting Sports Innovations or a TiVo, stuff like that is fine because it's allowed in carry optics currently. But I would also try to make carry optics a low cap, like change what we think of carry optics into a low cap division or a 15 round or a stock kind of division. So they're different. So you'd put currently what's carry optics into limited optics with those changes, but then you add like a low cap dot division. So people can be like, well, I'm going to shoot 10 rounds here, make this even more challenging, but gives it some differences than just limited optics currently.
If you combine it with carry optics and then you limit the capacity, do you think there's going to be a lot of feedback that would be negative for that?
Well, let me rephrase that. So I would add a new, I would add a new division essentially and make it have a limited optics slash carry optics that we currently have now, and
Okay.
then add that lower capacity division.
Like a production optics.
Yeah, essentially like what IPSIT kind of has,
Okay. Hmm.
because and it would give some it. And this is, I guess, my problem when we initiated limited optics is it wasn't different than open. It wasn't different than carry optics. It didn't have its own identity other than
Right.
2011's. I feel that some divisions to have purpose need an identity. Like Revolver is always going to be Revolver, It
Correct.
has its identity. Single stack is a single stack gun, even though it's a 1911. Even though I think you should be able to allow like other single stack 45s into the game, if because currently it's only a 1911 division by its rule set. But
Right.
but people might like shooting their single stack 45s like the now I blanked on the gun. It was in my brain and it's gone. I guess that's my life. But stuff like that, like production has iron sighted low capacity. That's its identity. Carry optics had an identity. Um, Limited optics just didn't feel like that. So I think if we amalgamate them and change and we add that new division, It's got to have its own identity of that lower capacity with a dot.
Yeah, but I feel like that's not going to get any traction with shooters because why, when I can just put in my magazine and shoot carry optics at a higher capacity? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
We already we're already having issues with production and lack of participation because it being a low capacity division.
I think if you merged like that idea of the dot with a low cap into production, because truly that's what a production gun is nowadays. You know, you could have everything comes with a red dot. You know, it has a capacity for a
Mm-hmm.
magwell. If you turn it into a low capacity division with a dot or irons, I think people would shoot it because it helps the friends in New York and California and but it helps our friends in our restricted capacity states, and it adds something to a complexity to be like another challenge into stage planning, because it seems with carry optics now you get a bunch of, or open shooters, match directors get lazy and decide, okay, I shoot a big stick, I get 30 rounds plus one in my gun, I'm going to design every stage to essentially screw everyone else. Or carry optics, I only have to worry about one reload. They don't think about the
Right.
single stack major guys or the production guy who's got to shoot standing reloads to shoot a viable stage plan. So I think having that other division would help people go back to a lower capacity and understand the difficulties of lower round counts and the challenge that it provides in stage planning.
Now, what are your thoughts then on like the survey that just went out about changing production to 15 rounds?
I'm for 15 rounds. I was even for
I am too.
make it fit the box. But then you've got the arms race of the CZP-10F can hold 19 rounds comparatively to a Glock holds 17.
Right.
15 is a good number. It aligns itself with IPSC, so you're getting people ready for the world shoot or international matches. But it's easy. It's yes, you still have to count rounds. I mean, honestly, being an RO on a stage and counting rounds is not so difficult as people make it sound to be, and enforceable. It's definitely, if somebody shoots to 11 in, or 12, I should say, in production and going to slide, or not even going to slide lock, then it's a he said, she said kind of thing. It can be long as, unless more than one RO is paying attention to it, but it definitely is not impossible to enforce.
Yeah, and I think I think at local matches, I think it would depend more on your fellow squad mates because you typically only have one guy running a stage at a local match,
Mm-hmm.
and he's shooting the same squad. But at a major where you have multiple ROs running a stage, it shouldn't be hard for one of those three people to be paying attention to that. So I don't think that's difficult to add in. And I like a straight 15 versus the box because it puts everybody at the same number of rounds.
Yes, I agree. It puts on a level playing field. Um, exactly. It just makes it a lot easier, especially for chrono or equipment checks. You know, it definitely makes everything streamlined. And I think
Yeah.
that's what we need. We don't need these obscure rules or one-offs. We need these, a concrete set that we can all stick to, and that's why we all shoot USPSA. We have a rule book and a rule set that we can go from New York to California and shoot the same match.
Yeah. Agree. So you're talking about having a high capacity other than open, another high capacity optic division, a low capacity optic division, and then whatever else there is beyond that.
Right. So we'd have like, in my guess dream world, we'd have PCC, open division, because it's a catch-all for everything.
Right.
We'd have limited optics. I'll call it limited optics.
Okay.
Currently what we have with carry optics, a low capacity, um,
We'll
irons.
call that production optics.
Right, production optics. Even I'd even throw production in there. I mean, it might whittle
Yep.
out iron sight shooters, but you could still play in that game, because I would feel that you shouldn't have to be required to use a dot or irons, but you'd still be in the same kind of playing field. You're stuck to the limited round count. You're always going to have but I would try to put revolver L10 single stack into like a classic division.
Okay.
So you try to
I'd go ahead. I'm sorry.
you would try to appease everybody and fix the rules to make it a fair, even playing field between the firearms. But because a revolver is distinctly different than a single stack, but it roughly is the same. You still have to do the same amount of reloads on a stage, but one's a magazine, one's a wheel gun.
Right.
And I've been beaten shooting carry optics. I've been beaten by a revolver grandmaster who was third in the nation last year at local matches. So
Yeah.
he's no slouch, but
No.
everyone picks on revolver shooters, but they have to be good at their fundamentals.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, they're just at a disadvantage. If they're at the GM level, then they've got their reloads down. They're quick. So they're going to beat a lot of people, but they're still at a disadvantage, with capacity. So they're having to reload many more times. So it's a lot more stage planning for them, a lot more strategy. But I'll be honest, I think limited 10 should just go away.
I agree
completely. There is zero. I've been tracking that, and there is zero participation in that. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, like even at Area 5, I think we had one shooter this year that I tracked. I see him at a couple majors now, but yeah, it's not worth it when you can shoot production or something else.
Right. Yeah, there's no there is zero motivation to shoot that division. And then the other thing is all people are doing is using it to collect another national title, or you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, just like especially with this year's Iron Sight Nationals, you have limited and limited 10 together with production and revolver and single stack. No one's shooting L10 because they're all going to go shoot limited. They're limited shooters. You have to keep, if you're going to have L10 around, that Nationals needs to be a different time than regular limited Nationals.
Now, I don't know if there were any major matches last weekend. I looked on the USPSA website and there were none.
Mm-hmm.
There may have been something, but it wasn't on the USPSA website. So the weekend before, I updated all of my numbers for all of the majors that have been listed on the USPSA website. And of all the majors that have been shot this year, 62 people have participated in limited 10 for a participation percentage of 0.69%.
Yeah,
So
that's about where it should be.
Yeah, but I mean, single stack isn't doing a whole lot better at 2.61 and revolver 1.09.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, revolver, like you said, though, it is unique. I don't want to get rid of revolver, but there has to be. Yeah, I don't know how you do it. I'm not that involved in the sport per se to have sat down and figured all that out.
This is where you need like the Jay Slater, you need Alex Bakken, you need Rick Wolf, you need Michael Pogge. Well, I don't know. Does Pogge shoot revolver? He might shoot limited. I don't know. Anyway, you need like the top guys who shoot revolver in ICOR and USPSA to come and sit down at the table and talk about what they need in a shooting sport. Because one of my clubs, my new home club, actually shoots ICOR the day before they shoot USPSA. So there is a few shooters who shoot ICOR, but it's definitely I've even talked to that match director. It's a different game all entirely.
Like it's a niche, really.
Well, besides that, it's just revolvers. It's the accuracy demand is higher than like IDPA. Like it's even more detrimental than a down one.
Well, and that's what I like about ICOR. That's what I like about Bianchi. I like those because I don't feel like unless you're shooting minor, there is no real premium for accuracy. If you're shooting a major power factor firearm in USPSA, you don't have to. I hate saying it like this because I don't mean to come off the way it's going to sound, but you don't have to be accurate. As long as you're inside that C zone, which is huge, that's all you have to do.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the gun isn't, it might be violent, but it's with the compensator and everything else, you're staying on target. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I would like to see something that would create a little bit more. That's why I like these matches where there's no shoots and there's partial targets and there's this and there's that, because it takes people out of what they're used to, which is practical accuracy, and actually puts them into precision shooting with a pistol.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is part of the sport, and I'd like to see more of that. That's why I like the actual sliding movers. Make people focus on what they're doing and know how to engage a target.
Right. Like looking at the Greater Pittsburgh Gun Club, who just hosted the Western PA sectional, those were pretty cool. Tanfo
Yeah.
Timmy, who did his PCSL match the other weekend with his the sliding swinger, that was cool.
Yeah.
We need more.
IPSC.
Mm-hmm. As long as my thing is, you gotta build them consistent, and I know Jason at Targets USA does. He comes up with consistent things. And I like to see those more in different matches. It adds a skill level. It's something if you don't see it at a club match, that's okay. But if you see it at a major match and it's cool and it's super repeatable, that puts that back in someone's brain saying, "Hey, I need to go back and shoot that match again." Or I'm going to tell my friends, and it's just going to be like Dragon's Cup. It's going to blow up. Every match is going to be sold out again because of the cool things they do. Dragon's Cup is so successful because they had good stages and they executed it well in the very beginning, and now it's just growing, and the match is at busting at seams because it sells out in 2 minutes.
It's like Carry Optics Nationals.
Well, that match was sold out really before it even opened.
Yeah.
Which is a problem. And I mean, I've talked to plenty of people about the issues with nationals, that nationals filling up super fast.
Yeah.
And
I guess they had like 700 people wanting to shoot that match.
Yeah. And
so 200 people did not get a chance. Sorry, go ahead.
And it sucks is because it's either you add days onto the match, which ROs got to take off more time off work, or just to be there. I mean, a lot of ROs, most of them who work nationals are retired. Myself, I am an RO who travels to major matches who is not retired. So I have to take vacation time to go work these matches.
Right.
So it's kind of hard to get the new blood in the sport that when it requires you to be gone a week plus, especially going to Talladega, if we have to go down to Talladega. So it's that, or you restrict it to only X people are getting in. And if the match fills up because of performance, that's cool. But it sucks is because it's 40+% of our sport is carry optics. You only have so many slots, and if they're all gone before open registration happens, what does that say about our membership? We don't really want you, or we only take the best of the best. I mean, if it was truly we only want the top level shooters and it's a real true sport, that's cool. But this is an Everyman Days hobby/sport. So we need to involve everybody from the C D class shooter to the Grandmaster and the national champions.
Yeah. I mean, B class reigns supreme. Mm-hmm. If you look at the numbers for level 2 matches and above, all the way across the board, typically your biggest division is B class. So why would you want to exclude them is what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? You're giving them that experience to want to continue and be the next master, grandmaster, national champion.
Right. Well, and it might honestly, B class might be the biggest competitive division purely because it's very hard to get out. It's not difficult to get into B class after you figure out how to shoot their sport. But getting out of B class is an entirely different thing.
Right. It seems like once you get out of B class, you've kind of figured it out and you can keep progressing.
Mm-hmm. Well, and depending on the classifiers your match sets up or major match performance, by the time someone typically gets out of B class and they're performing at that B class level or above in major matches, they're just waiting for enough major match points or the numbers to align for it to count. Because they figured out the sport. They've just shot out classifiers or burnt, it's burnt to the crisp, and you would never shoot it like this in a match, but it's a class fire. So you're just going to hope that you hit all these targets correctly.
Right. Yeah. You're trying to burn it down. So I get what you're saying. All right. So you haven't been in the sport very long. You've only been in it for coming up on 3 years. It's only been 2.5 years.
Yep.
So you very quickly went from new to the sport to being a match director for a sectional match. Just about 2 years and 6 months, roughly.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So what was it that made you want to do that in such a short period of time?
Well, that's a great question. So I guess it goes back to me even becoming in February 21. I took an RO class, just getting into the sport in October, got an RO class, started learning the rules to be a better competitor.
Okay.
A year later became a CRO. But at that point, I came into a group of good individuals running our club, Brooklyn Sportsman's Club. And I ran into a good group of people, like my good friends today, like Ken, his name's Ken Lane, Walt Pagel, his wife Savetta, a bunch of good people who set up our local matches and was like, hey, you can hang out with us. And then you start getting involved. You become a club member, being invested into the club, being involved. And they're like, so I shot the 2022 Michigan sectional. I was starting to become part of the group. And they're like, my buddy Ken was running the Michigan sectional in Area 5 that year. And the next year he had Area 5 for sure. And all of them asked me, like, are you interested? You seem very involved or want to be involved. I'm like, yeah, it's just part of my nature. My mother, raised me to be involved. She was always doing things with us. If it was related to scouts or church or any extracurriculars, she was always involved with us. So it wasn't like we were doing it on our own. And I think I learned from that to an aspect of, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to jump head and feet first, be fully involved, fully incorporated, and want to give back and volunteer. So they were like, well, do you want to run the sectional? Because it's going to be a lot of work on Ken to do Area 5 and the Michigan sectional again. And I was like, yeah, I'm interested. So I kind of got voluntold in a way to be the match director, but I don't regret it at all. It was an excellent experience of learning. And I had never really been a match director by myself of a club level match either. So I went from being a part of a group running club matches to you're running a major match as the match director, the guy who's in charge. Before everything goes down, you need to coordinate everything. I was very lucky. My friend Ken, he did help a lot. He had a lot of contacts around the club that I was able to use and to my advantage to make it a lot easier on myself than starting from scratch.
Well, and I was going to say, it didn't sound like the guy left the area. He just couldn't run both matches. So you still had, support from him. So you could always turn to him and ask questions. And, in that regard, you still had to do the legwork, but at least, you had someone with experience that you could turn to and ask questions and get them answered.
Oh, absolutely. It seemed like we were on the phone 2-3 nights a week, talking about the match and through that process, we were already good friends. We become even better friends. Now we travel to a bunch of local matches together because it's just, we enjoy each other's company.
Oh, that's cool. So friendship has developed.
Mm-hmm. And if I can put this in a better way, is everyone in that club is a lot older than I am. Like, I'm going to be 29 here in about a month, whenever this drops, probably in a couple of weeks from then. But so I'm a lot younger. I'm like half the age as most of the people I hang out with at the local club level. So they see that energy and drive, and it revitalized them a little bit too, to be like, okay, we're not completely lost here.
Gotcha. Yeah, you'll be turning 29 in September then?
Yep.
And I'll be turning 57 in October. So here we are. Okay, so I'm curious then, with as new as you are to the sport and being the match director for a major match like that, have you learned or determined that you like a certain theme for a major match?
Well, I like what I like, I guess. So when we would run
I hope so.
even at club matches at Brooklyn Sportsman's Club or BSC, they were not easy. They were challenging. There was far shots. We owned 4 large poppers and never used them. We had 30 plus mini IPSC mini poppers on the bays. So shooting a 25-yard mini popper was very common for us. So
Okay.
challenging and technical are not words in my vocabulary. That's just a regular club match. So I guess my vision is very skewed on what makes good stages. In the word options on a stage don't really mean anything to me because there needs to be true viable options, not left or right. It's, ooh, I could cut a complete position out. That's an option. Or stuff like that. But
Right.
I definitely like a mix of stages. I like far targets, far poppers, far paper, fast swingers, bobbers. Bobbers are challenging too.
They
But
can be.
they need to make more sense. So, like from looking at Carry Optics Nationals, it was the same kind of thing. It was paper, like a bobber that just kind of bobbed forever with no real options of taking something in between. It was just like you shoot the paper, you shoot the activator, you shoot the paper, then you end on the bobber. But shooting a 30-yard bobber through a port is always kind of fun, in my opinion, because it's a challenge. Because you're losing so much time on the up or the down dwell of the bobber. But interesting activator sequences. But I really like things that are reliable too, because I come from a major match background of like I think I've worked so many majors now. That's all I care about, kind of really in a sense, is it's got to be repeatable, reliable, and works every time. Because you've probably been to a club match where something doesn't work, and it's very frustrating on the shooters because the prop doesn't work, it doesn't want to activate right, and you're like, what do we do? You call the match director, the range master over, and you're like, you need to make a decision on this. So repeatable and dependable activators are nice. But when it comes to stages, like I like a variety of mix. A little bit of hosing targets, but not necessarily hoser stages. I need some challenges, but you give people the option of throttle control to hose on some targets and then have to be ready for this far piece of paper or a far steel in the same array. But it's definitely I've been skewed because of what I deal with on a monthly basis of setting up stages or even how I design stages myself. When I sit down and design on SketchUp, most of my stages are not all the same. They get a theme or a flavor in them, but they definitely test skill. They're definitely, as we put it, a shooting match, a shooting stage.
Okay. You know Keanu Sai?
I have not met Keanu, but I know of his name and his difficult stages he likes to put on the ground.
Yeah, he does. He loves no shoots and partials, and I'm okay with that because again, that goes back to I think we need to have not just practical accuracy, but we need to be tested on precision as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I'm hearing from you.
Right.
You know,
And to add on to that, like when we would set a no shoot out at our club, or even for me, the no shoot's got to make sense. It just can't be pilfered with no shoots. But we had a lot of club rules to keep for no shoots because we needed to keep bullets from leaving the range ever. If one bullet left our range, we were closed. We were going to be shut down because certain of how the direction was of some of our bays. They would
okay.
it would go over a road and could hit a doctor's office. So if it forbid, heaven forbid, if it left the one side of the range, it wouldn't be as bad. But if it left over the roadside, it would shut down the whole club. And no one likes to see clubs get shut down and turned into, subdivisions.
Yeah, that would be horrific. All right. So I started smiling because you started to touch on something I was going to ask you as a follow up.
Mm-hmm.
And that is so with your sectional match, the Chile Gunworks sectional
Mm-hmm.
or Chile Custom Gunworks, what was your mix of stages? And I'm only going to use IPSC as an example. Was it like a 3-2-1 or was it a 2-2-2 or a 1-1-1 type of a thing, or was there even any consideration for that?
when it came down to it, we had just had the rules changed to allow. They got rid of the small, medium, and large course, round requirements, or no
Right.
position. What was it? What was it? Minimum or the maximum number of positions. So we got to play around with that. So some of my stages got tweaked a little bit on the ground because it was like, oh, okay, we can add another target here and it's going to be fine. I based my selection more off of match flow than a strict 3-2-1 or a 2-2-2.
Okay.
I looked at them at a more of a time frame limit. Like, so typically a major match, you're going to schedule a 45-minute block for you to shoot this stage as a 12-man squad. My goal is that my staff is going to push you through in 30 minutes, and I'm never going to have a backup. Was my most concerning goal was no backups on any stage, even if it was a big stage. Like, we have a super long wide bay in the back corner at Brooklyn. I want to say it's got to be 30 yards, 35 yards wide, and 30 yards deep. So it's big, and it's usually the biggest stage to reset. So behind that, you need a technical-ish stage that's going to take some time to reset, yet not be super challenging, but still take up the same amount of time as the big bay to reset. But so, and then the next stage behind that, stage 6, needed to kind of be a burner. You needed to be able to move through that thoroughly. So there would never be a backup, but everything you could plan for it too. One's going to take a lot longer, and then you're going to be through the next stage very quickly because it was a fast stage.
Okay. So you're not necessarily a 3-2-1 guy. You're just a look at the match flow, look at your bays, and make it work.
Right. Now, I can say this is I wish I did a little bit different of some stages, but I also feel like if I did like a standard stage in one of my bays, I'm very much wasting good space for a really good stage. Although believe there should be standard stages in all matches, yes. But I also felt like if I had a standard stage, I wouldn't have been utilizing the bay space as well as I could. And I also had a difficult time getting and keeping staff for the match. So when it came down to the match, we were at the bare minimum of staff needed.
Oh, wow.
So it's not like I could have put a double bay in somewhere and had 2 stages going. So I just had like enough, which was like 30 staff plus my auxiliary people like my range masters and, Mr. Fix-It and whatnot.
Okay. Was there anything in particular that you learned as the match director from that one?
Yeah, so always, even though you always want to have more staff, is plan for even more because more things will come up. Someone's going to get sick. Someone's going to have a death in the family. Someone's going to have jury duty. Always plan to have an abundance of extra staff, even though you have to accommodate them and hold them in hotels or food for them. Take in consideration for that. Ask for help, but don't try to be prepared. Like, I know my club was I'm very fortunate with the club that I had at Brooklyn Sportsman's Club. We could set up weeks in advance. We could start setting up 2 to 3 weeks early on certain bays because all 10 bays that we use for USPSA are gated off. They're action bays. No club members can use them other than for USPSA Steel Challenge, 3-gun. So it's not like normal club members could access those bays at any time. So we could start setting up in the beginning of April. We started setting up, and then by the 3rd week of April, everything was up on the ground, ready to go. Delegation is definitely a good thing that needs to be managed as a match director.
Yeah. There's only so much you can do.
Well, and I guess my biggest thing was I knew what needed to be done as a match director, but the problem was I didn't write it down to delegate because I knew in the brain what needed to be done, but I didn't have it on paper to give somebody a list and say, hey, please do these things. Because everyone was coming back to me the last 2-3 days before the match. Hey, what can I do? What do I need to do? And so it was always a back and forth. It wasn't, here's your list. Go do this, please.
Gotcha. Come see me when you're done.
Right.
I'll give you another list.
Yeah. Or take 3 people, go split this list up, go do these things. So that's always and I feel bad because a lot of the help I got was people who are a lot older than me, like people in their 50s and 60s coming to help put on the match and help me. which I feel really bad of asking someone of that age, that age difference, to be like, hey, do you feel comfortable putting up walls today, kind of thing. Like, I'm the young guy, so it's like I should be able to do this, but truly learning to back off, delegate, and doesn't matter who you're delegating to, long as it's within their comfort level to do so, you should be able to do it. Which I learned that pretty quick.
I've helped out at the Virginia State match,
Mm-hmm.
putting it, building some stages, and a couple of different local matches. I've helped with building stages, and but it seems like typically you're only going to get a couple of people, and they're typically older because, like you said before, they typically have more free time than the younger guys.
Mm-hmm.
So now, did you come up with the names for all of your stages?
I did. I got to pick all the names for my stages because I was the match director, and this is one of my rights.
I do like your stage 4. We don't own any large poppers.
Mm-hmm. Oh, everyone bitched at Area 5 the year prior because it was so hard and it was all mini poppers, and it's like, I was corrected. We own 4, but I'm not hauling them out of that shed because they're not like a popper base and a popper. It's all connected. It's all bolted together. Right. And we don't have like a golf cart with a trailer to haul it to where we want to use it. You're carrying it 25 yards deep into a bay and however far it is away from the barn. So I'm like, mini poppers, I'll use those. But
yeah, you own the ones that where if you don't watch your fingers, they're going to get pinched off.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, I've carried a few of those around. Those can be exciting. That's sarcasm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's why everyone should have med kits on the range too.
Right. For amputated fingers.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, it seems so you started your USPSA career in October of 2020. You became an RO in February of 21, and you started your podcast in February of 21.
Mm-hmm. That is correct.
So what was the fuel for the podcast?
It's a little selfish. It's so I could really talk. It was my excuse to talk to really good high-level shooters and not feel like I wasted their time. Especially at like coming in middle of C class. I'm a new guy, super enthusiastic about the sport, want to get better, want to train. I needed a way or a niche to be able to document my discoveries through conversation. And I'm always a chatty Cathy. Anyone gets me on the phone, we're spending at least a half hour on the phone talking about something. If it's shooting or it's family, it's whatever it is, I'll talk. So I was able to use the ploy of, it's a podcast, your information will be out there, but it was really for me to ask questions to develop my own shooting in the beginning. And then I think probably about 10 episodes in, I realized I am not Arik Levy. I do not need to try to be Arik Levy. I just need to have a conversation with people, and people are going to enjoy it. So it became much more of me asking some questions as if we were on the range, just shooting the shit. But people enjoyed it. It was conversational. It's entertaining to an extent, but it's just, and then it puts the guest at ease truly too. Just like this conversation we're having today. I don't feel pressure. I don't feel like I'm in the hot seat at all. It's just enjoyable.
It's a conversation. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But yeah. I thank David Blanton for telling me I'm not Arik Levy, because then it molded my podcast into what it needed to be to where it can grow today. Like I'm very successful at what I do for how many level of episodes I have, purely because I changed what I do and made it more about me and the person connecting than asking all the same grip trigger questions that the Arik Levy's of the world. And there's nothing wrong with being Arik Levy.
Right.
But not every podcast needs to be that either.
Absolutely not. And if you want to hear spicy topics, then you got the hit factor, as well as other stuff that they're going to teach you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I like the hit factor. And although I don't agree with Jeremy most of the time, and I feel like I need to rage at my phone and type to him when he's completely wrong on something, I'm like, Jeremy, stop talking out your butt. You don't know what you're talking. Like, it's a rules thing. And he absolutely is wrong. And I'm like, I hold back the urge to like blow him up on a message and be like, you're completely wrong. Read the rules first and then talk. But I do enjoy other podcasts too, which
Me too.
I do entertain myself by listening to shooting podcasts. Not that many. So it's my selective listening is, what I listen to and what I like. So if I listen to you, it means I like it.
Now, what did you find most challenging when you started your podcast? Was it that format until you figured it out, or?
It was I guess the hardest thing for me to figure out was who should you talk to? Who should you ask? And honestly, it's okay to get told no. Nope, most people won't tell you no, but if you get told no, don't feel discouraged. It's just that they're not the right person to do it, or they just don't want to. Like a few of my friends, I shoot with them in the area. They're like, be like they're a GM or something, and they're like, I'm like, you want to come on the podcast? They're like, no, I don't fit well on podcasts. I'm very polarizing. I'm like, that's fine. That's your right. Um,
Yeah.
but getting used to talking and not having dead air was the biggest thing I kind of feel like I learned. My buddy Robert Wyatt of the Paracast, he's like, bro, you got to stop with this dead air. It's not good for the show. And I'm like, I know. So I have then learned now to keep talking or ramble on just to to not have the dead air. It might sound silly, but learning from radio talk show hosts as well, if you ever listen to a radio talk show in the morning on your drive to work or any commute, um, they're just like there's 4 or 5 of them in a room and they're just boom, boom, boom,
Yep.
boom. Nobody's stopping. They might laugh at each other for a second, but then it's the next guy's talking. And
Yes.
learning to produce a show, I won't even say what I do is produce a show. I make a show, but I try to implement it like as if I was producing it, even though it's what its budget is right now. Netting, I'm in the red on the podcast, but it's okay.
I hear you. And that's why I actually go back and I edit that stuff out. Like if there's a dead air, like I don't like more than about a second of a gap.
Mm-hmm.
Because as a podcast listener myself, I don't want to sit there and did something happen? Did my podcast shut off? Why all of a sudden I don't hear anything? So yeah.
That is definitely a big thing. Dead air definitely can be annoying. But they will if you do a video version, the video can be trash as long as the audio is good. If you're not fighting the quality of listening, like I'll watch YouTube videos in my pocket. What I mean by that is I'll put a YouTube video on with earbuds in and it just sits in my pocket or on a table and I'm listening to it. And I lose out on a lot of video content that way. Like my David Blanton, the Humble Marksman, put out a great piece of content on this new gun, this new whiz bang, this new holster, and I just listen to it. So I lose all the visual aspects, but his audio is good, and I can listen to it.
Right. You can still pick up stuff because he's still explaining things.
Mm-hmm.
You just don't see it. But I'm with you. There are certain things you can't do that with. So
yeah,
but that's all good. Now you seem to go live a lot on your Instagram, especially during dry fire. Is that just to like connect with the listeners or?
One, I did it originally when I probably about a year ago or more, was to show that dry fire isn't sexy, it's not glamorous, and we do make mistakes. And I got a
That's
lot of
impossible.
yeah, we never make mistakes, but I got a lot of praise for like, yeah, you fucked that, you messed those reloads up, but you showed it and you owned it and be like, yeah, I messed them up. I'm human. I'm training. There's always room for improvement. So
That's why we're training.
right. So I would go and I'd go live to dry fire, but it's a way to then communicate back and talk to the listeners, especially at a better time for them because, it's always kind of more in the evening time when I would do those. So people would come in and chit chat, talk a little bit. Dry fire would get relaxed. More of a conversation would happen, show off a gun or a piece of gear, and then eventually get off the call, the live, and go back to dry firing. The quality of the dry fire always would go down during a live because the focus wasn't quite there. but it's always good to show that we're all human and we're not all Jay Beals, and our basements are not all like Jay Beals' basement, even though I wish it
No,
was.
that's a shooting bay basement.
Yep.
That's
Simunitions,
literally a
right?
bay that he just keeps changing the setup on. So good
Yeah.
for him. I mean, it's awesome, to have that space. My basement space is taken up by my mom, so I'm not gonna. Mom, you need to get out of here today. I got to train.
Right. I
That
mean,
wouldn't go over too well.
he did build his house, so he was like he had
Yeah,
to convince his wife to let him build in the basement to have that pretty much be all for dry fire and loading ammunition, and there might be a kid toy here or there and maybe some like
right.
utilities, but it's a dedicated national champion training space. I mean, Noel Zarza, right?
Yeah,
Like his basement is just as legit. I mean, full size targets everywhere. He changes it around every once in a while, but it's not as cool as Jay's. But Noel's basement is pretty cool on that level.
yeah, and the cool thing about Jay is it's not. I mean, he's also like you said, he built his house, so he's very handy. So I mean, he builds swingers and walls and ports and different things. So he definitely has a unique style, and I think it's eventually going to pay off.
Oh, absolutely. Like I love that he built the rope pulley wall because he saw it once on Instagram and he's like him and his brother Nick built it and they've driven it to a match once or twice to use it as a prop and instead of just leaving it in the basement. So I'm hoping there's a walkout basement feature to Jay's house that we just haven't seen yet instead of having to carry it up the stairs. But
Right. You don't want a weld basement, you want a walkout basement.
yes.
And with his relationship with Targets USA, I could see where here's your idea, Jay. It's only going to cost you 5% royalties. Um, where him and Targets USA form a relationship, a partnership of sorts where, Jay builds a prototype of something and Targets USA perfects it. And then, the J Beal wall activator or whatever the heck you want to call it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a future there.
Well, and just like the Targets USA, I want to say it's the Stomper or the wall activated stomp box essentially. That had to have come out of Jay's brain, a need that Jay had to train activating targets in dry fire without being like a go fast don't suck or the double alpha one or
Right.
the there's another one that I have that I can't even remember the brand name on it anymore, but you have to still flick it and it runs on a roller bearing or
Right.
a bearing and it's like Jay, up until this point, all of Jay's training was pretty much live dry fire. So he needed everything he could squeeze out of it. So those hand activators or foot activators that were reliable and easy to set up in dry fire, that had to have come out of Jay's brain.
You would think at least some of it.
Mm-hmm.
But again, too, Jason at Targets USA, he's pretty creative himself. But you put those two in a room together, and we're talking Albert Einstein level creativeness.
Oh yeah, there's been plenty of times I'm on the phone with Jason or he sends me a video of a new target. I'm like, what do you call this thing now? Oh, I don't know. I don't have a name for it yet. We're not there yet. But he's always coming up with something cool, and I think Max Leograndis is pushing him to newer and higher heights too with the PCSL kind of stuff.
Oh, okay.
So they've got a relationship together as well. Because I know Jason, I think at some point was going to make knockdowns or some targets for PCSL specifically too. So there's nothing but going up for when you put the best rifle shooter in the world with a steel manufacturer and J Beal, the sky's the limits on what you could make.
Yeah. So I need to go back for just a second because I had a spicy question I forgot to ask you. But I assume for the Michigan sectional, you were in the black, not in the red.
No, definitely we're in the black. I was very
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. That's a USPSA specific question right there.
Yep.
Just ask.
Well, but I
If
kept
you
a
read
very
between
good.
the lines.
Yeah. I'll be open and honest with the listeners. After that match was all said and done, we brought in little under $9,000 into our club for what we made on that match. but I had to keep sure that spending was to a minimum.
Mm-hmm.
I was very fortunate. We bought a bunch of targets from Shooters Connection the year prior, so I didn't have to buy any new targets for the match or pasters. So a lot of the biggest cost was staff. I had to hotel my staff. I had to feed the staff. I bought some staff prizes. Um, and then of course you've got water on the bays, and then consumables that you need like paint and more wood to build walls again because they got shot up in the off season.
Right.
So the money that and attendance was down from the match prior. So we were already fighting a lower turnout of shooters. And between 2022 and 23, we only added $10 to the match fee. So it was 125 the year before, it was 135 this year. So we didn't put a big increase on cost, but we also didn't have to go buy targets. So that was a big $1,000 plus savings on not having to expend targets and pasters for the
But
match.
even if you did, you're still talking $7,000.
Right. And it's not like it goes in
So,
my pocket. I didn't get
right.
compensated, but it goes back to the club. I think then what they're ending up going to do is hopefully expand the bays or buy more steel or activators. So reinvest back into the club, the sorry, the USPSA club and the club grounds, because they were hoping to push the two biggest bays, make them even bigger and push them back farther, about another 20 yards,
Oh,
so they
wow.
can actually so they could easily and comfortably shoot the longer steel challenge stages in the bay, because currently they can shoot them, but they have to put it at a diagonal. So
Mm,
you've got your
okay.
180s a little different. So you don't want, with the 180, because it goes with the berm, it's kind of tricky. So if they're able to
Right.
push, and all they'd have to do is push the dirt back and realign, takes out some trees and push some dirt, and they could have 60 yard deep bays.
Okay. Now, going back, continuing on this same
Mm-hmm.
theme of having gone back a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
what do you think of Scott Arnberg's concept of like the area director or somebody buying just a crap ton of targets at the cheapest possible price, and then all the different clubs purchase from that, where if you all order collectively, you can get the targets for cheaper.
Well, we've done that actually. We've done plenty of group buys on targets. We'll have our section meeting in January, middle of January maybe, in person. Like the executive board and invited guests will come, and people have asked where you get your targets from, who's going to make a buy. So then some of the clubs who can't afford, or it doesn't make sense to necessarily buy the 3 or 4 or 5 boxes they need at once. They're going to be like, hey, who's already making a buy? Will you ship it to you, and then I'll come pick it up from you? So we do that kind of already, but it's not necessarily what someone's buying from another person.
Okay.
But I do like the idea of helping each other out, as clubs, and as a Michigan section, we do that very well. We try to accommodate everyone in each club that's there and make sure everyone's got a voice at the table when it comes to what's happening in our state, when it comes to slots for nationals and just happenings around the state.
Any chance you guys are going to incorporate any of the Jay Slater points race stuff, ELO rating stuff for national slots?
Um, I don't know. I'd have to look at Jay's Elo stuff, but when it comes to that, our best shooters go to nationals because they're the ones who want the slots. They ask for the slots from the clubs. So the section coordinator will get the slots from nationals from HQ. He'll look at the activity points and say, okay, Club Brooklyn, you get 2, 3 slots. The next club, you get the same amount of slots because you were kind of in the same tier bracket of participation. Not quite there, but it wouldn't make sense to give one club 4 and one club 2, and then like another 2. I think because this year at nationals we had six slots, 7 slots maybe to distribute. No, it was 6. We had 6 slots to distribute through the whole state. But
Okay.
our best shooters went to nationals on our slots, so it wasn't like somebody who knew somebody like a C class shooter or something. We sent all masters to nationals this year.
So, does anybody ever fall through the cracks? Let's say it is a B class shooter who wanted to go to Carry Optics Nationals, um, and help set up at his club all the time, participated all the time, but didn't get a slot because the internet crashed when everybody tried to register, and he didn't get a slot. Does anybody ever fall through the cracks like that?
No, because we would take care of
Okay,
so how it works is the section coordinator distributes to the clubs. The club gets to choose.
right.
So at that point, you could say, hey, like for myself, if I wanted to go to nationals, I'd be like, hey, I volunteer all the time. Can I have a slot to nationals before you give them to whoever emails you? Because that's usually how it goes. Is somebody emails a match director saying, hey, can I have your nationals slot so they can go sign up? But usually because that's not a problem. But most of the people who at my club, Brooklyn Sportsman's Club at the time, we would just go RO national, like they would go RO national, so they wouldn't need a slot necessarily, like a pre-registration slot. They would just get a staff slot.
Gotcha.
So, so it was easy to distribute to shooters. But but I did remember we did have the B class national champion Skylar Davis is from Michigan, and he got a slot to nationals.
Okay,
So
good.
he was able to win and get a match bump at nationals.
Nice. Good for him. All right, let's go back to PCSL for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
Have you noticed a rise in PCSL matches in Michigan?
There's been one two gun match. Well, I can't say that. There was one decent sized two gun match, and then that outlaw club I was telling you about at the very beginning at
Mm-hmm.
where that Tim Herron class is. That's what they run now. They run PCSL matches out there for their monthly outlaw matches, as I call them. But they're run under
Okay.
PCSL rules because there's no real draw to go there. It's for me, it's a 3 hour drive to get to that club if I wanted to shoot there. So it definitely draws them to people from all over the state who want to shoot PCSL because it's hard for most of our clubs who already shoot USPSA or IDPA or Steel Challenge to add another shooting sport to another weekend because club activities are already full.
Okay. So, what are your kind of winding this thing up now?
Mm-hmm.
What are your personal future goals in the sport?
Well, as much as I would love to be a grandmaster, I can see it happening at some point. You know, I am very fortunate. My wife and I, no children. Well, we have fur children, so there's no real commitment to having to take care of any kids, which I know is a very odd circumstance for most people. I can kind of be selfish on myself a little bit and train and dry fire. So I'm very lucky in that regard. So I could see being a master very short. Like I'm in the middle of B class right now. I just need to line up a classifier or two, and I could push to A class. I was very proud of this season. I shot Area 5 against Aaron Edens, the national champion, and I shot almost 73% of Aaron. So I know that I'm on the right path of match performance. So it's not just, oh, I'm a paper A or a B or whatever. I'm truly
Right.
progressing and I'm making good progress this year. So I'm hoping, be an A, be national, even if I stay in B, I want to be competitive at all major matches I go to. So that's a goal, and I'm working very hard on it, and it's coming to fruition. So I'm happy with that. Always would love to go up in classification, but I'd rather be performing at major matches against national contenders in my classification. More goals is, for in the USPSA sector is I'm hoping in 2024 our current Michigan section coordinator, he's up for reelection and he's not planning on rerunning because he's going to move to for personal reasons. So my goal is I'm eligible at this point to become the Michigan section coordinator. So my goal is to take that responsibility and be the coordinator for a while, be able to help clubs, get people to understand the politics of USPSA, support all of our clubs, and make sure as a younger guy I can be the voice of change where it needs to change to progress and grow our sport because we have seen losing shooters within our state due to
Mm,
COVID. Like we were high on the hog on shooters. You'd have 75, 90 shooters at a match. Now you're barely getting 50 at most of the.
wow.
So we're down in shooting percentage, and the people who do shoot, they go to all the matches essentially. So we need to find
Okay.
way we need to find ways to get new people to shoot or get people back into shooting, if that's through marketing, media, social outreach, things that we can kind of do better. That I feel that a younger guy who's got new ideas, who's willing to take a chance, is going to work on that. So I'm hoping to get the Michigan section vote, the board vote to approve me running, because how that would work is the Michigan section club match directors sit on a board. We call it a board, executive committee if you call it, and they can approve or disapprove of someone running. If people want to run for it, they can approve of them to be the section coordinator. So that's my goal. And my goal is to be the section coordinator, which I don't think there'll be a problem, because I am passionate about this sport. I thought I wanted to be an area director, but I just don't have the PTO time to be gone on the road as much as I know that requires. So it's stepping
for
stones.
now.
Yeah.
Okay. But maybe 4 or 8 years down the road, maybe.
Maybe
or 12 years.
If the right person's not in that position, absolutely. I am more than willing to at that time reevaluate. I think coming up in 24 is when people start campaigning for. Is it 24 or 25? I can't remember when I think it's the next election. So it'd be Area 2 and Area 5 are at the same time. So Rick Steele's not going to rerun. I've talked to him. Rick's a friend.
Okay.
And I appreciate everything Rick has done for me and our area and the org. He has stood up for the right thing on many occasions, like standing up and voting no on Joe Rotowski's suspension when most people didn't. But excuse me. But I know he's not going to rerun, and I know there's plenty of people who are going to go in the running for Area 5 who've got more time to dedicate to it at this time. So. But I think they take over. They would take over January 1 of 25, but they're running in 24.
Gotcha. Yeah, I was trying to look. I mean, the website is set up to where it's not necessarily the easiest to navigate in a hurry.
Correct.
So
here we go. I found it. Area 5 election is July of next year, so they'd take office in 25.
Okay. Yeah, January of 25.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah, I found it too. Okay. All right. And was it Area 2 as well? Yep. So yeah, you're right. Area 2 and Area 5. And I don't know if Layton is running again or not or what.
Knowing Layton, I'm going to expect that he is going to rerun. Just knowing how he feels about the sport and feels what he can do for the sport in his area. I will say, from what I heard from some of the coordinators there, is they do have meetings on a regular basis, which I am totally for, about communicating with the area director, communicating down to section coordinators so they can then pass the information on, which I think even Area 8, wasn't Ted doing those before he became president? I think he was having area director meetings with the section coordinators.
Maybe.
But I think it's a step in the right direction, is actually having those Zoom calls or WebEx or something, just so people can actually talk to them. So you're not answering the same questions to everybody twice, because that's the worst part.
Yeah.
You sit on the phone all night, spending your free time, and their significant other's probably like, oh, what did you get into now? And you're on the phone forever. But at least if you can answer all the same, everyone's got the same question, you can answer it all at once.
Yep.
On that kind of open-ish forum, it makes it a lot easier.
They're much more willing to allow you an hour or two at one time versus 30 minutes tonight, 30 minutes tomorrow, 30 minutes the next night, because it just seems to always be in the way. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's interesting, though. They've only partially updated Area 8. They have Russell as the Area 8 director, but the next election is July of 2023.
Oh.
Somebody forgot it. That's all. They just forgot to update that and put 27.
Darn it, Rick Brotzel.
That's hilarious. So 25 would be 1 and 3. Okay.
Yep.
All righty then.
Which is already crazy to think that Scott Arnberg's already going to be up for re-election.
That is nuts. And he literally just got in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I have a feeling if he does well, then it'll be a formality, assuming he wants to continue. So, he seems to be a pretty good guy for that. So I assume you're active and you vote as well.
Absolutely. I'm always gonna be an advocate for people to go out and vote, even though it's not my election. I'm
Yeah.
like Area 6. I was like, you guys got to go vote. You've got good options here. Go vote. Don't be shy. I don't necessarily need to feel that I've got to press who I'm going to vote for. It doesn't matter who I'm going to vote for in any election, but it's the fact that you just tell people to go out and vote.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you can't complain if you don't stick your neck out and go hit a simple button to vote.
Right.
But I
And
will.
and if you ever shoot major matches, you should be voting.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, if all you ever do is shoot locals and you have no plan, okay, then I'm not gonna. That guy's not gonna. He's not gonna care. He's not gonna notice the politics. So
Right. Well,
I'm.
and I was glad to see Russell win because I do see him at all these major matches. Like all the major matches I shot, but one this year I saw Russell at. He was out there. We were there. He was a range master for me at one of them. When I was down, he was the range master of Kentucky, and he does his job. So I'm glad to see Russell in there. I hope he's able to impact good change on the board. And
I do too. I have high. I hope that people go in, do make good decisions and do the right thing. My only concern with Russell is he seems to be very aloof. So we've always exchanged pleasantries. I have no ill will towards him. I like the guy, but he's just a little aloof, which, it makes it hard to vote for somebody if you don't know who they are.
A little bit, yeah. I can definitely agree and see that.
Yeah. So he's just a guy who keeps to himself. But when you're running for a political office per se, you got to come out of your shell a little bit.
Yeah, and I've even talked to him about that. It was like Russell, why didn't you talk to anybody? He's like, I'm not even really trying to campaign. It was just kind of like how Matt Hopkins went for Area 6. He's like, I'm not really campaigning, but here we are.
Right. Yeah, I reached out to him, so I tried.
Yeah, just tell him that you have Perrier for him, and he might.
Oh, is that his favorite water?
Yeah, he loves Perrier. I agree. The peach Perrier is delicious.
Okay. I am anti-French, so I don't do Perrier.
Yeah, it was tasty. But it was always nice because it was always free. Thanks, Russell.
All right. Well, Manny, that's all I've got. Was there anything else you wanted to add or anything we talked about that you feel you need to explain? Or
No, I think we talked about a lot today. And like Dave, I appreciate you coming on. Let me come on. I mean, we're doing this on your show. I kind of forget because this is usually where I wrap it up too. But no, and I guess I want to thank all my podcast partners. I won't name them all, but I appreciate all of them for supporting my podcast and my endeavors. Without them, it's kind of hard to do some of the things I do. But I thank them, and I really do. I thank my wife for being super supportive of my second part-time, full-time job kind of thing.
yeah,
I don't get compensated for it, but it's like a job, and it puts a lot of hours into it. So I do thank her for being super supportive and flexible on that kind of regard. So,
all right. Well, thank you for coming on. I appreciate it.
No problem, Dave. Anytime you want to chit chat, I'm more than willing to.
Until next time.
Don't be a little bitch.
Yeah.